I'm Cat. My day job is an operating partner at Primary Ventures, which is an early stage New York focused fund. We have about $160 million under management right now that we're actively deploying in B2B and consumer companies. I actually started with Primary about 3.5 years ago and joined Robbie and Kara's pretty early in the PeopleTech journey. And so, just to give context on my role at Primary as an operating partner, because I think that's a little bit vague depending on the fund that you work at, I'm very lucky to have partners that basically have let me craft the role in a way that really services our portfolio in the most impactful way, because we're also geographically bounding ourselves. We have an ability to support our investments in a way that's different from other funds who are investing all across the country. So my role at Primary is split between participating and helping on due diligence and building councils that we give economics to that help us give our companies better advice more quickly. And then the other side of it is actually helping them operationalize their businesses once they're in the portfolio. So how do you think about founder dynamics, founding team, foundational KPIs, org structure, all of the things that I think founders want to do really well early on, but just don't have the time or the energy to focus on. And so you think of us as an extra set of hands that hopefully helps you get to that next milestone faster. At PeopleTech, I think one of the most fascinating things about being in a community like this is just how collaborative every HR leader is that's participating. And for me, being able to selfishly also look at deal flow that is in New York is beneficial for my fund. But on the other side of it is being able to look at companies as early as possible and shepherd those investments through with the support of the buyer, right? I think the reality with problems like recruiting or things around benefits is that because people think that it's simple or common sense, that they don't have to have advisors or consultants in the same way as if they were building a deep machine learning like product. And I think that's actually wrong, because if you're not building with the customer in mind, then you don't really fully understand where the pain is, and you're applying, I think, a very skewed sense of what the customer actually needs. And so I think PeopleTech brings a very unique group of people together that can actually help you, iterate on your product, give you feedback on go-to-market, give you a sense of what budgets we actually may be able to deploy. And that's insight that you just don't get. And I think that's why a lot of investments or a lot of companies in this space have failed in the past. I spend a lot of time thinking about future of work now because it's part of the day job, but because we are such early stage investors, we're not as investment thesis driven as later stage funds are. But the things that I think about personally are you have a multi-generational workforce. How do we think about supporting that? People are not necessarily retiring at 60 or 65, and people are living longer. So how do we think about, there's a whole swath of really experienced people who are technically retired but have a lot to give back. And so I think there's lots of opportunity to build companies there. There's distributed workforces, there's the gig economy, there's the fact that most people stay in jobs for 2 to 3 years. And so there's tons of opportunity to build valuable companies there. And you also just have a multi-generational workforce that now also prioritizes mission and value and impact over safety and security, which I think is just a sign that technology has actually moved us forward a fair amount. And if we want to keep doing that, we need to really think very thoughtfully about how does a company like ADP or American Express continue to be relevant to the next generation that's coming into the workforce, because it becomes harder and harder if we don't start thinking about that. And Silicon Valley has had this longer than New York has, but you have generations of people and families that are working in the same startups now, and it creates a different level of complexity that you didn't have in the past, because most of the time people have retired by then. So I've been really fortunate. Before I joined venture, I spent about 10 years in B2B software, started my career in retail operations. But one of the things that I've always had, and maybe shouldn't have had when I was 23, was a seat at the table, right? So I think that it's fundamentally important for people's strategy to be aligned with business strategy. And one of the mistakes that I see a lot of companies making, startups, corporations, doesn't really matter, is that they see HR as all the things that we don't want to do, right? All the complaints that we need to deal with, and it's not seen as a strategic thought partner. That if I have any advice at all, is to make your voice heard, right? There are a lot of really forward-thinking HR leaders. We've seen a lot of startups who have scaled fail at a lot of people-related things. There's an opportunity for us to actually be more than just a place where people complain.